Hello and welcome to Shy Talk, an Irish history podcast. Number 1 in our hearts, number 563 in the charts. This week we had Julie J on as a guest from the Crimeland podcast to talk about John Bodkin Adams, a doctor from County Antrim. And she was great. If you want to hear more stuff from Julie, there'll be a link to her podcast. Check out Crimeland podcast. There'll be a link to her stuff in the description of this episode. But just a forewarning that 95% of the story is in this episode. And then the last little bit is on the Patreon, behind a paywall. But you can listen to this whole thing and enjoy it. But if you want to hear the aftermath of the story, you can head over to the Patreon. The link for that is also in the description. And fucking just give us the $5 for Christmas. And you can hear about what happened to Bodkin Adams and all the film stuff and all the other bonus episodes and all the fucking... It's basically a whole new podcast. And while you're throwing out $5, there's also a link to all of our upcoming live gigs. We're on in the Sunflower in Belfast this Thursday, the 24th. And then we're on in Whelan's on the 14th of December in Dublin. So you can follow that link and get all those details there. Follow Julie J. Go see her stand-up. She's class. And enjoy this episode. All about Dr. John Bodkin Adams. That's right, he's a doctor.
Gather around now, you're in for a story. Old tales of lore, all in search of a glory. The history and mystery of lads, lasses and all. Discoveries and voyages, the rise and the fall. Follow me now as we go back in time. Retrace the steps of Irish heritage to find. Joseph from Carlisle and Catherine the Dog. Guide you through the ways of Shy.
You ready to go?
Hello. Welcome to Shy Talk. I don't know what camera to look at. I don't know if
Do you want me looking in a camera?
no, you're grand. This
I'll just
one,
look at you
look
guys.
at us. And we'll all just pretend that they're not here. And I won't
Perfect.
keep looking at them to make sure they're still working.
Of
I'm just going
course,
to
yeah.
believe that they're going to be fine.
I need
It'll
to
be
start
grand.
slouching as well, which is... I never had to worry about that
I've
before.
always been a slouch.
I love it, but now those cameras, I have to pretend this
Yeah.
is natural.
Can't be coming across weak-shouldered.
No, that'll lose us subscribers.
I was going to say, especially for an audio medium,
Yeah.
it's all about the shoulders,
I think
isn't
it is nowadays. That's with the Instagram and the TikTok.
That's what I look for in my
yeah.
podcast host.
Absolutely.
How's their stature?
Yeah.
Well, ours not particularly. That's short.
Well, but
men.
that's why we're sitting down, so we seem taller.
Oh, wait, I said the wrong word. Posture.
Posture. Well,
Posture.
stature.
Yeah, because stature we're kind of...
We should have left like a meter stick here, like marked at 6 foot here, just misleading the audience members. But we're here with Julie J
Hello.
from the Crimeland podcast
From the Out Crimeland podcast,
Yeah.
yes.
and from stand-up comedy.
Bit of stand-up.
Yes.
We
were on Julie's podcast. What was that? Is that a month ago? 2 months ago?
You were on Crimeland a month ago. Yeah, and you were great. Thanks so
Yes.
much, guys.
The
was
Somerton
yeah.
man.
Yes.
Yeah.
You were lovely.
Did you see that there was
An
There
update.
was an
I
update
did.
about it, yeah.
Yes.
It was a really boring update where they're like, yeah, all that fun stuff is probably...
yeah, somebody sent me actually a link to that, and I didn't mean to whack it up on the Patreon, which I will this week at some point. But yeah, I mean, a bit of an unsatisfactory
It kind of
ending
ruins
to
it,
it all.
really, to be honest.
Yeah.
I missed this really quickly. What is it?
I can't really remember, but it's basically like, all the fun, interesting, cool theories. I was just some guy. Is he a spy? Did he just... No,
None of that.
None of that.
Just a guy.
Don't
Just
give us
a
that
guy.
update.
I know,
You
yeah.
keep some information to yourself.
Well, that is
That's
true. Well,
not-
most conspiracy theories probably end with, and it was just some lad. Yeah, I know it doesn't really make sense, but he was he just did it.
Yeah, can you explain it? No.
It's
mad.
just Sometimes
Some
people
lad.
just do stupid stuff. How could a bullet bounce like that? I don't know. It just does, I guess, sometimes. But we're talking about a much lighter subject today. Dr. John Bodkin. Did we watch a documentary about him together?
No.
No, good. Because I kind of forget what this was. I wrote it a while ago, so this is going to be new for everybody.
Because I was already feeling a bit anxious as soon as you walked in and you were like, I can't wait to talk about John Bodkin. I was like, I wish I knew who that man was.
I think it's just maybe I was too excited and that was putting a lot of pressure on the situation.
Maybe, yeah.
I think I was trying to force the crack too much when I come in. John Bodkin. It's just something with the name, isn't it? You just
It's
want to
a
say
fun
Bodkin.
and light and fun name.
Well, because you know what bod means, Oscuelga. You know what? Well,
Brian
bud.
O'Driscoll.
Yeah.
Bud.
May you rest in peace. No,
Now, Brian O'Driscoll is alive and well.
so that's what you'd like to think. I've got another
Yes.
conspiracy theory. He
Okay.
died. in
That's a robot.
1996, But
So while we
Robot.
dust off our tinfoil hats over here, so BOD, Oscuelga means a
Bud.
weenie.
Oh,
A weenie, a willy, a Mickey, a langer, whatever you're having yourself.
yeah.
So that's why I just thought the name Bodkin. I just came in and I was having
Yeah.
a crack with that. So that's maybe what put the pressure on you.
Because I'm feeling it a lot less now.
Yeah,
it's been
that
like a
was where I
pressure
was
valve.
coming from. It was kind of, I suppose, the dual connotations.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I literally have never heard of the man's name.
You'd never heard his name?
I don't think so. Or like if it,
He is more famous than. Well, we'll get into the story now, but a lot of the stuff he does is in England. But he's fairly. I don't know. He probably should crop up in our history more. Well, I know we're now in the middle of November, but when I was writing this, it was October. Scary season. Watching the documentaries on this guy was scarier than any horror film we watched. It's
Oh, wow.
very unsettling.
When you said you wrote this a long time ago, I was thinking back in the noughties.
No,
So, like,
for me,
last
a long
month.
time ago was like I
That's
didn't
yeah.
write it this morning.
You young people, my God. A long time
A
ago.
long time
4
ago,
weeks.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
It
in-
is.
in
That is a
podcast
long-term
world.
relationship, yes.
Yeah, it's pod long. We're just gonna start
Oh,
sticking pod in
stop.
front of everything now. Anyway, let's pod start. In January 1899, John Bodkin Adams was born in Randallstown in County Antrim.
I know where that is.
No idea.
It's in the north of Ireland.
His family, well, not at the time. It was just in regular Ireland. His family
Era.
were part of the Protestant sect known as the Plymouth Brethren. Already sounds like a cool cult. They've been around since the 1820s and believed the literal words of the Bible and nothing else. His dad, Samuel, was a minister in the sect, and he married his mother, Ellen Bodkin, in 96. They had John 3 years later in 99, and another son called William Samuel in 1903. So the other son was named after the father, which is always a sure sign that John's not going to be the favorite child.
Yeah,
But it was his younger brother.
His
was named
younger
that-
brother was named after the dad.
That's tough because you have
Yeah.
to name a child straight away. So they looked at him within the first day and were like, "I'm not giving this one."
I'm not
Save
putting
it.
my
He's not
legacy
carrying.
on
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
No.
It's like, what if you don't have another one? It's a risk I'm willing to take.
Well, luckily for John, his dad died in 1914 of a stroke, and 4 years later, the favorite son also died of influenza. So that's another thing he
Handy.
left to him. Yeah. So now John, he's like 15. He's the man of the house.
Oh, already that's giving me shivers.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
a junior searcher is the man of the house.
Yeah.
My
True,
God.
yeah. And you said it's influenza. It's not.
Yeah,
he didn't kill his brother.
He didn't kill his brother, no. Although maybe he sneezed on him. But he died in the famous 1918 pandemic that we all learnt about during our own pandemic.
Ah.
But nowadays you'd be like, this is prime setting up a serial killer. Early childhood trauma, brother dead, father dead, a lot of pressure for maybe an overbearing religious cult mother.
Was he mean to cats?
He might have been mean to cats, but I mean, in the early 1900s, that's just life. I think it'd be more perverted to find someone who had both parents and all their siblings.
And into cats. That would have been kind of a red flag, probably.
Oh,
I
yeah.
imagine.
yeah.
But so did he have like a bit of a shit childhood then? Was there
Yeah.
trauma there?
Well,
or was
like
the
his-
dad just kind of strict?
He was very, I mean, so whatever the sect is, they believe in the literal words of the Bible, but I mean,
That's going to be hard to live with.
it's gonna be
yeah.
hard. But like, it's not as if everyone else was like in Northern Ireland in the 1900s was like, oh yeah, laid back Bible, which is take it or leave it. It's pretty. But then I suppose if it's noteworthy that he is part of a sect that's strict for Northern Ireland, maybe he is fucked.
Yeah.
I would- Let's just say he probably didn't have a happy childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he went to Coleraine Academic Institute, followed by Queen's University in Belfast. He was referred to as a plodder and a lone wolf by his lecturers. One of those sounds pretty cool, but yeah, just leave the plotter bit out. Go back to when you were calling me a lone wolf. That was pretty. That was bad. That was cool.
Did he say why? Like, he said no friends.
He's just a bit of a loner. I don't know. Bit of an odd fish.
And a plotter.
Yeah.
What's that referring to? Just his gait?
Plodding along,
Yeah,
kind of
just
probably.
Cruising.
Walking.
Yeah. Bit of, could
Do you
you
think
put a bit of effort in.
If he walked a bit quicker, he mightn't have been such a lone wolf.
He might have, maybe he was
could have caught up with the pack.
Yeah, you always think of a
Very
lone wolf being out ahead. Maybe he was just a slow wolf, which sounds less. But he's not great in college. He misses a year because of TB, but he graduates in 1921 without honors, which was explicitly stated in every. I mean, let the man fucking. It's been 100 years ago. Let it go.
What counts as, is it 2-2? Is that still in honours? Or is it 2-1?
I think it's from 2, 2, 1 and a first
And a one.
Oh, okay.
are all honours.
Ah, well, 2-2, you shouldn't be getting...
I know, but I mean, it's 100
I say that
years
because
later. Just let
I'm
it.
pretty sure I got it by like 1%.
Yeah, same. What you got? You know what? Right, honors students, fuck Bodkins. There's gonna be a lot more high fiving now that we've got cameras.
I love high-fiving.
Oh, it comes across great in an audio medium.
You know what also does? The trucks that keep driving up and down the
I
keys.
wouldn't worry about that.
But I never mind background noise in a podcast.
No, I'm kind of the same. I
It's
listen
a
to like
little
ones
bit.
where people go for walks in like mountaintops and stuff. So you can just hear everything. Right? Yeah, it's fine.
I don't mind it at all.
He just wants to start recording out in the mountains, so we don't have to.
I do. Yeah, no, I don't have to bring cameras with me. You can just
Yeah.
go walking.
But so he joins up at a military hospital. Doesn't go too well. He becomes a GP in Sussex, in Eastbourne in Sussex in 1922. So he's living in Eastbourne with his mother and his cousin, Sarah Florence Henry. He's tipping away there for years, making a bit of a name for himself. And in 1929, he borrows £2,000 of one of his patients, William Morhood. So that's the equivalent of £110,000.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
To borrow from a student.
No, from his patient. So it's a lot of money to borrow from someone you're supposed to be looking after.
Well, that would be very concerning if I rocked up to my GP for the pill and she's like, while you're here,
Yeah.
can I borrow a 50? Like, I'd be asking some questions.
Yeah, let alone 50,000.
And what did he claim he was? We don't know. What,
No, so he used it to buy an 18-room house called Kent Lodge in a posh neighborhood.
That's good.
Yeah.
At least it's put into assets.
He's put into assets.
That's like if he was like, cheers for that, and then just walked straight into a casino.
Yeah. But like, if he's like, William, he wouldn't. I'm just trying to get on the ladder, trying to make it out there. It's rough for a single doctor in the 1920s. There's not a lot of unwell people in rural England at the time. And then he gives him the money and he goes and buys like an 18. That's a bit excessive.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
for
is.
sure.
It's not a starter home. But,
18 beds.
18
yeah.
beds.
Unless he's going to turn it into a practice.
I think he's turning it into like an apartment complex. But anyway, so William's wife, so the wife of the patient, she thinks that Adams is getting overly close with the family. Kept inviting himself over for dinner in the house.
he's inviting him. She's inviting him over for dinner.
No, he's inviting himself over for dinner. So he's just kind of showing up and being like, "How's the patient?
You should never-
turkey roast. Don't mind if I do."
You should never do that.
No,
But he was obviously lonely if he's just showing up.
he's a lone wolf. Let's not forget.
Yeah.
Um.
Then he really shouldn't have been buying 18. But like that's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just
I'm not
wants
saying
friends.
it doesn't have to be a studio apartment, but like 2 beds.
Yeah.
You're only ever filling
Yeah.
one, John. That's.
I think that maybe that was just thinking an 18-bed house. Now I have the 18 rooms that people will come.
Yeah,
Yes.
It'll
hard
fill
to-
itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
no one was going to come over because there's nowhere to stay. We don't want to get a late night horse and carriage
Don't
home.
want to Uber.
Got 17 beds
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I mean, his logic is sound, but so she thinks he's a bit weird. He keeps inviting himself over for dinner. More than that, he keeps charging random things in the town to like their family account. So I guess back then there's no credit cards or whatever, but you'd have like, the Brennan account, and he was just sort of like, yeah, put it on there.
I told you not to tell anyone about that.
Yeah, this is just for the people at home. You can charge any
Brennan
pint and
account?
Yeah,
It's
so it's a
good to
secret
know.
Brennan account. Yeah.
It is a little tab behind the bar at the Halfpenny.
Yeah.
And
Charge that one to Brennan. But so he was, that's a bit, he's a bit overly close. He's borrowing
Yeah.
money, he's charging stuff to the family account. So this is fast forwarding a bit, but when William dies in 1949, Adams showed up to the house uninvited and took a 24-carat gold pen from the bedroom, telling the widow that he wanted something of her husband's to remember him by. And then he never visited again.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's great, though.
Yeah.
Because you'd really put someone under pressure. Because if like, no, I want something to remember him by. They're like, but how about you?
Yeah, a 24-carat pen.
Yeah, give that back. Here's.
Would you not remember him by that 110 grand you borrowed off him?
Yeah.
Remember the
Yeah.
fucking house you live in?
Just take a urine sample and be done with
just
it.
be done.
Just every time you walk home in through your front door,
Yeah.
just that's enough to remember.
Thanks,
the big
old man. But so I don't know how do how do English wakes work? Because he showed up uninvited. I mean, half of the country will show up uninvited to your wake here.
I
That's
didn't
not
even
an
think
issue.
the English did wakes.
Do they
No, I
not?
don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think he would have at least signed the book with the pen, or he was
Yeah.
he's
Cheers.
straight out the door?
Bodkins X. XOXO.
Oh, the pen is so heavy for my hand. All that gold.
I don't want to waste the ink. It's he wouldn't have wanted it this way.
No.
Save it for a special occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so that's what did I say, 1949. But anyway, go back to 1933. Bodkins got engaged to a woman by the name of Nora O'Hara, but he called off the wedding 2 years later after her father had bought and furnished the house for them. So her dad,
Cheeky.
sets up a house, furnishes it, probably pretty expensively, and he calls off the wedding. No one knows why he called it off, but there's a rumor that his mother didn't approve of Nora, and another rumor that says Adams wanted Nora's dad to change his will to leave more to Nora.
I think either way it wasn't meant to be.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one more.
Love finds a way.
Yeah.
And love so he got engaged.
But he already has
hangs
a
around
house.
for 2 years. Yeah, but he wants another house.
That's fair.
And he also has that second house. I mean, do you have to give? What's the etiquette there? Do you give that back if you call off the wedding?
Do women give back the ring if the engagement?
Oh,
Now, there's,
well, this is a good question, and I like how you're looking to me because
Yeah.
yes, I have broken off a lot of engagements in
Oh,
my
it
time.
is.
You're the ambassador
I
for
think
all
it kind
women.
of depends on the woman. Well, according to Judge Judy,
Yes.
because this often comes up, she always says that an engagement ring is given with the promise of marriage. So if the promise isn't fulfilled, well, then it's kind of a contract. So thereby they
Yeah.
should return.
Yeah.
But a lot of people would say, well, this was a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how.
Well, I think personally, I don't know why you would. My thinking is because I know friends, load of my friends, well, not a load, but I certainly know a lot of people who have been engaged and then it didn't work out. And I think it's probably about 50-50, the people who kept it and the people who didn't.
Really? Yeah.
And in my experience, the people who kept the ring are like, well, you know what, fuck him, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
he maybe is just feeling too, I suppose, kind of regretful about the whole situation or awkward to ask for it
Yeah.
back. But I mean, I don't know why you'd want to keep it.
Yeah,
to
you
be
wouldn't want it
honest.
hanging around, really.
Unless if you just left it long enough, then you could just sell it. And it's like free money.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. You
Yeah,
could
because I was
probably
going to say,
pawn
depending
it.
on what, if it broke down, if the relationship broke down because of something the man did, and the woman was like, I'm not giving that ring
would
back.
she expect
Fair.
it back if he gave a ring and then it didn't work out, or would it
Depending
depend
on
the
what I did.
circumstance?
It really
Yeah,
depends on what
yeah.
I don't know.
Jason
There'd be
is entrusting
certain-
future Jason. I love it.
But there'd be certain things, I suppose, you'd be like, all right, Mia Cooper, that's gone.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. But it's always good to plan for these things as well. Be like, but then, so what? The other option is that he wanted her dad to leave more to her in the will. That's an awkward conversation to have.
It is.
How does he even know what her dad's leaving in the will?
I was going to say, does anyone have that conversation with their parents about what you're leaving in the will? I mean, is it a
Oh,
thing?
even your own parents?
yeah.
Well, just as in, I do know some people and they would talk about, oh, you know, when I get my inheritance, I'm going to do this, that, or whatever. And it's a strange one because
No,
how does
yeah.
that come up casually in conversation?
And even when you think about it, the idea of spending the money, that you're like,
oh,
Yeah. I don't know. Well, I'm the eldest son, so I will be inheriting tracts of land that I will not know what to do with. And will disgrace the dead
are you
memory
from
of
a
my parents.
farm?
I'm from the son and daughter. Like my grandparents on both sides were farmers,
Okay.
and then their children are second generation farmers, and so they've got like a hobby farm, and I'm third generation. I don't fucking know what to do with it. You know, like if there's land, but I don't know how to
don't know what to do with it.
Don't know what to do with it. So
I'm sure there's a YouTube.
yeah, that'll be great. Just me at the wake, YouTube and how to farm.
He's going to watch.
It sounds like so much work.
Just watch Clarkson's Farm.
Yes.
Yeah, you know how much you love Jeremy Clarkson.
I know how much. That'll be in the will, like a DVD box set of Clarkson's Farm and a farm. But, well, so Adams, Bodkins, I changed his name when I wrote this script a lot. But
Okay.
John, he was a fan of Will's. In 1935, he inherited £7,385 from a patient, one Matilda Whitten, which is over 670,000.
I'm starting to think I have heard of this man before.
Yeah, was it all the times I brought him up in conversation the last 5 weeks?
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's...
Uh,
I have a feeling now, just like a light bulb went off above my head. I'm like, oh, is this the thing you've been talking about a lot?
This is where we need the real video. It's just like a quick cut of loads of clips of me telling him stuff. As he's just like, yeah, I know, yeah. They don't need to keep banging on about it.
I'm trying to keep it fresh for the podcast, so I
Yeah.
get to react naturally.
That's why he just doesn't listen to anything I say.
Very convincing.
Yeah. Jason, can you turn the hob off? I just have to run down to the shops. Is it, yeah, for the podcast,
I don't want to
man,
spoil this.
Just, it's fine.
But while you're in the shops, get me a Doritos. But £670,000. Wilton's relatives contested the will in court, but it was upheld. Although one amendment of the will giving Adam's mother £100 was overturned. Now that's just flagrant. So he's got. Now I'm not saying he did anything, but Wilton changed her will to leave him over half of her estate, worth £670,000 in today's money.
Mm-hmm.
But then he got another little tack on to the will, leaving his mother £100.
Oh.
Just fucking take it out of
See,
his
you
cut.
had to break that down for me.
Yeah,
and I could tell, Jason,
Yeah.
you were...
Yeah, I was like...
Our pennies both dropped like ding
Yeah.
ding. Yes,
And
okay.
he was trying to get her to drop loads of pennies.
Wow.
But that's too much. He's already getting so much, and he's like, don't take it out of... I won't give my mother money. I also want it in the will to leave her, a woman that has probably never met the deceased.
Wow.
That's like the smoking gun of... Like, that's how you get caught in like a Netflix crime docu-series.
Yeah.
Of like, you were getting away with all of it, and you just got too greedy at the very last
Episode
second.
5. Yeah, that's
when he
episode
starts.
5
And
stuff.
that's when it changed forever. That is a theme in this where he really is pushing it a lot. But so between 1939 and 1941, Adams started one of his patients, Agnes Pike, on a regiment of drugs, including morphine. She got so sick under his care that the owner of the guest house that she was staying at got the family to call another doctor. Agnes Pike, so this other doctor is Philip Matthews. By the time he shows up, Agnes Pike was in such a state that she was unable to recall her own name or age. Dr. Matthews told the family there was no medical reason for Miss Pike to be treated. He took her out of Adam's care, and after about 8 weeks, she'd made a full recovery. So she got like her mental faculties back. She was able to walk around. But when he'd first got to her, she was like, didn't know where she was, didn't know her name, didn't know her age. He's like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with her.
Apart from just all the morphine.
Yeah, he's been treating her with morphine for 3 years.
3
Wow.
years.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
But maybe she needed it. Maybe. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah. It sounds like he's not either.
No. He's got his degree he's got his not an honours degree from Coleraine. So he stays in Eastbourne all throughout World War II. In 1941, he gets a diploma in anesthetics.
Anesthesiology.
Oh, very good.
Turns out it's just more morphine.
Yeah, I don't know. Do we want him putting people to sleep?
Yeah,
do we?
yeah.
But I think Julia's natural teacher came in there and was like, yeah, this man, a lot of red flags so far. And you're like, but he got the degree.
Well, he got there in the
main
end.
thing.
He
Yeah.
did, yeah. Now, should he have it?
People
He
called
put in
him
the
a
work.
plotter.
Yeah.
People called him a plotter, but look at him
The lone wolf.
putting people to sleep.
Yeah. So now he's got a degree so he can put people to sleep, and he starts working in a local hospital 1 day a week. There he gets a reputation of being a bit of a fuck-up. He was known to fall asleep during operations, eat cake or count
God.
money on the job, and even mix up the gas tubes, leading to patients waking up mid-surgery.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. Any one of those is enough to be like...
How do you fall asleep while you're doing the surgery?
Because you're gassing people, they're going to sleep, they're probably yawning, you're like,
And
oh.
it's kind of boring for you, I suppose. Because once
Exactly.
they're asleep,
No
you're
to talk
just kind
to.
of making sure they're still asleep.
Yeah.
And it's not like there's a surgery happening to keep you entertained.
Oh.
But now, so is he doing the surgeries?
No,
he's just doing the anesthesia. Yeah, doing that. And then,
then
as soon
eating
as
cake.
that happens, it's like,
Yeah.
it's like a mother with a newborn, right? I have to sleep at the same time as
Yeah.
them, because then when he wakes up, I gotta wake
Sleep
up.
when they sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the counting money, it doesn't say this explicitly, but I assume he's smoking a fat cigar as well. And he's just like counting their will money as they're under on the table. Well,
I thought it was actually okay with that, because I thought you'd said first he was counting cakes, and I was like, how decadent. Oh no, the money's fine. It's not as bad as he like.
well, so yeah, he's getting a bit of a reputation as a bit of a fuck up. In 1943, his mother died. That's it. I don't know if that's relevant later on, but it's not good.
No.
So in June 1948,
Do you think is it now he's going to spiral? All of this has been.
yeah, well, you can tell it's getting juicy because I left the month in. Now it's no longer years. We're narrowing in on the detail.
We're going to be going
Summer,
Episode
hour by
6.
hour, minute by minute.
Yeah, now it's getting
1:42 p.m. Dun, 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 dun.
in June, some unspecified date and time, 1948. Edith Alice Marl was visiting her son in Cheshire when she had a stroke.
Oh.
She was brought into Eastbourne on the 5th of July and became one of Adams' patients. He starts her off with morphine. He adds a little bit of heroin after a few weeks. Between July 1948 and August 1950, she received routine evening injections of morphine and heroin from Adams. But after that August, her condition deteriorates and her dosages increase. So he's keeping her on steady morphine and heroin for 2 years and then starts ramping up.
That's tough. I don't know enough about heroin. That's probably the perfect amount to know about heroin.
Probably the perfect one.
So I've seen Trainspotting,
Yeah.
and I know that morphine is a way to get people like off of doing heroin.
Yeah, is that methadone is just morphine light, is it?
I think so, yeah. So it just feels like then it's like just when they think that they're out, back on the heroin, and just a week of that, they're like, no, back to morphine. No, you don't.
Well, the morphine's there to balance out the heroin. What's the
course.
heroin there for? Which is you wouldn't want to be giving her morphine raw. It's like, what a medicine. But he increases her dosage in August. That coincides with a change in her will, which left Adams a chest of silver cutlery worth £200. Mm-hmm. It also gave him her Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost, valued at £1,500, and a Jacobean court cupboard. But there's another change on the 13th of September that cut Adams out of the will entirely, and she died on the 13th of November, aged 81. So it's a little... So she's grand for 2 years. Right after she changes her will to leave him her car and all this other stuff, she starts getting worse. Then she changes her will again to get rid of him altogether, and she dies a couple of weeks after that. But Adams certified that the cause of death was a stroke, and on inspecting the body, slit her wrist to ensure that she was dead. Which doesn't sound
Yeah,
very...
I didn't want to be the one to say it, but this is just shocking look.
It's
Oh, yeah.
It's terrible.
I don't know if that's the medical way to do things, even in the 1940s, just to be like,
No.
I don't know.
There has to be another way to make sure someone's dead.
The pulse?
The pulse would be...
I
He
know.
doesn't know how to find the pulse. He
Yeah,
didn't
well-
get his honours degree.
He was
doesn't
the
know.
plotter.
Yeah. It's
Slit the wrist first, wait 20 minutes, then check the pulse. And if it's still there, you've gone massively wrong. But even, right, so despite the last addition to the will, Mr. Marl's son gave Adams the Rolls Royce and the chest of cutlery. Adams also helped himself to some infrared lamps that she'd bought. I don't know, the son gives him the car anyway and the chest, and while he's in the house for the wake, he just walks off with some lamps. After all that, he builds the house
He's not going
for...
to be able to, like, hide that in his coat.
Oh, I don't think he's not the sort of man who'd be hiding it, and he'd just be like, I'm just going to take this to remember your mother by, and drive off in a very expensive car. But so after all that, he still bills her estate for 1,100 visits. So that gets him like £1,600 altogether. It's later estimated that Adams had visited her. He couldn't have visited her more than 321 times. He'd known her for only 861 days between that period. So even if he visited her on weekends and holidays, he would have to visit every single day and twice on a lot of days. to hit that number.
Yeah, well, 2 injections every day.
Every day, Christmas, holidays, weekend, Easter.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah. I have a friend who
Too
got
much.
fired from a cafe because he was meant to be doing like 3 days a week and he was charging 40 hours.
How did he do that? Just as in on the...
He got
Logbook.
he got fired very quickly.
Yeah.
He was just like billing. How about 40? And they just went back and looked at it like, well, that does not make any sense.
No, he's getting so much, and he's just being so blatant. Like the match just doesn't make any sense.
I
Honor,
kind of respect him for it though.
yeah.
Just really pushing the boat out.
Yeah.
So bearing in mind all the stuff he just got from her, on her cremation form, Adams wrote that, as far as I am aware,
When you're done, I want that urn. once you spread those
You
ashes,
just
is
pour
that
it out.
you using it for anything? Because it'll
So-
hold one of these lamps. Lovely.
well, so he said, as far as I'm aware, I have no financial interest in this debt. So he didn't need to do a post-mortem. So this is one of the flaws that comes up in this. You can just, so he's in charge of everything. He does the treatment. She dies. He slits her wrist to make sure she's dead. He cremates her. Then he's in charge of signing the form to say, I have no benefit, no money coming out of this. He signs that. Then he burns the body, gets rid of it all. So it's all
It's just self-regulation.
self-regulation.
And,
So he
Yeah.
just ticks a box to say, like, nah, I didn't get a car. It's grand.
Well, if they asked him, did he get any money from it? He's like, no, I didn't get any money.
No,
A Rolls Royce counts as money now. I think that's a car.
it's outrageous.
If I know anything from winning streaks, there's 3 times the money, right? There's holidays,
Yeah.
there's cars, and then there's straight cash.
He's going for
So
the triple
true.
threat.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so, well, in 1952, his cousin Sarah that he used to live with, she developed cancer. Adams gave her an injection, and half an hour later, she was dead. So, it's, despite being a massive fuck up, who's eating cakes on the job and leaving a trail of dead old people behind, he's thriving. A few people claim he was the richest GP in England at the time. So he's managed to work his way into being GP for like high society members in the region. He's treating MPs, Olympians, painters, and the chief of police, and a load of wealthy businessmen for some reason. I don't know why or how.
But all of these are okay. No one,
They're all great.
they're all fine.
I think.
But then, look, all the young, fit, healthy people with money
Yeah.
are perfectly fine. And all the old, sick,
Yeah.
wealthy people.
They're, I don't know if I wrote this down later or I'm just thinking of this now. I think maybe one of the reasons was because he was very quick with the old morphine diagnosis.
Yeah.
You walk in,
Straight
you're like,
to morphine.
yeah,
Yeah.
got a bit of crick in the neck, morphine.
Yeah.
Feeling a bit malaise, morphine.
But you know what? It's not completely unlike, what's happened
Antibiotics?
with Oxy
Oh, I thought you were saying
Yeah.
in the
antibiotics.
States. The
Yeah,
fact,
yeah.
all these people were going in with like a football injury or, a strained wrist or whatever, and they're coming out with basically a prescription for heroin,
Yeah,
essentially.
And like 3 months later, the prescription's done and you still need it. So
Oh,
you're like,
have
goes
you
straight on to
watched
the good
Dope
stuff.
Sick on Disney?
no.
It's just brilliant. And I just finished Barbara, I never know how to say her name, Barbara Kingsolver. I think she wrote Poisonwood Bible, but she's from Virginia and she has a new book out called Demon Copperhead. And it's essentially kind of, it's her take on David Copperfield.
Okay.
But it's set in but it's all that, like you go to the doctor with something small and they're just over prescribing you straight away.
Yeah.
And that's everything between like the medication for kids for like between like anxiety, for ADHD, for all of that, and then straight to the very top of it, it's all those opioids. And
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
God, it's a terrible country. I wish my visa didn't run out, but it's a terrible country.
But it's only bad down the line. In the early days, it's great.
Yeah.
You're getting
Yeah.
free morphine. Well, maybe that was the reason a lot of people were choosing him as their GP of choice.
Perhaps.
True.
No such thing as bad press. But one such well-off couple were Alfred and Gertrude Hullett. On the 23rd of July, 1956, Gertrude died unexpectedly under Adams. She was 50 years old and been seeing Adams for depression because her husband had died 4 months previous. He'd also died under Adams' care.
Okay.
And Adams had been left £500. So Gertrude was depressed and suicidal. Adams was personally giving her barbiturate tablets every morning. So I think barbiturates were like a medical cure-all for the elderly folk. Just hoofing them full of barbiturates.
Aren't they what killed Marilyn Monroe?
Yeah.
She overdosed, I think, on barbiturates, wasn't it?
Or was it barbiturates or CIA?
It's a weird
One
way
of
of
those
pronouncing
two.
John F.
Yeah.
Kennedy.
I was.
We all went there the same.
I actually recently listened to a podcast about that, and very disappointingly, they seem to come to the conclusion
That she just died.
that she did accidentally overdose.
Uh,
But it just feels like such a coincidence that Bobby Kennedy was in LA the day she died.
yeah.
Bobby Kennedy
Didn't
gets
live
His
arrested.
there.
history, yeah.
Didn't live there. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know.
I do. I'm just not allowed to say it.
Come on, Jason.
He definitely did. No, she didn't.
Can we not say that?
I don't know anymore, to be honest.
What are the Kennedys going to do?
I don't know.
Get murdered.
That's true, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're from bad stock. They all have
are.
like bad backs. They're all sick.
Yeah.
It would
weaky.
be like funny if, because all the conspiracy theories are that this secret, extremely powerful Illuminati style family, they seem to be one of the most unlucky, unfortunate,
No.
getting
Yeah.
murdered left, right, and center, and just getting them
Dropping
Throw
like
them off you.
flies.
Throw them off the
Yeah.
trail, though. All of a sudden, you're like, someone's coming up. You're like, they know your secret. Well, him.
Yeah.
He's dead now.
I do think as well, don't think, you know, this isn't the first podcast to throw out a link potentially to the Kennedys in relation to Marilyn
No.
Monroe.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But,
Or maybe.
I
Maybe
don't,
we're
I
gonna
don't
hit
know,
it big.
Jason. Is this the grenade that's going to blow everything up? I'm not sure. Like, people are like, what? Did you hear about this?
We're going to
Yeah,
stop the
could
midterm
be.
election in the
True.
States to be like, we need to focus on this Kennedy thing.
All these states turning red
Yeah.
because of you, Jason.
Yeah, you never know. You
Blood on
never
their
know.
hands.
It would be the first time.
We better. We're just going to post this episode to the
I
White
presume
House.
Texas voted red, did it?
Yes,
It's
yes.
always red.
Yeah, but I lived in Austin, so that's like 90%
democratic.
blue. Yeah, so then it's as soon as you get like half an hour outside the city, it switches. But like in
But
the
then,
city,
so are they basically not represented then?
in a sense, I mean, like they decriminalized weed a few months into the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, and then the rest of Texas was like, "What the fuck? How are you going to do that?" Like, it's Austin. You just let them do that because
Yeah.
we give them nothing else.
Oh, that is funny.
Yeah,
And it's just throw them a bone. But so one of the other things about barbiturates is that it would leave you in a very mind-altered state and very suggestible. So say you're giving it to your patients who are on the way out, and then you're like, while you're at your will.
Do you remember how I've always been your son?
Yeah,
Remember?
that. So on the 17th of July, she wrote Adams a check for £1,000 to buy a car her late husband had promised to get him. So that's nice,
Oh, okay.
you know. She also changed her will to leave Adams her Rolls Royce Silver Dawn.
He's got two, man.
He's got.
This is too many cars in general.
Yeah,
That's why he
for
needs
sure.
more homes. But so Adams paid the check into his account the next day. But when he was told it would clear on the 21st, he requested to be given special treatment and paid the next day. Turned out to be handy because in between that time, she fell into a coma and died.
Oh, that is
Which
handy.
is good,
then.
yeah, because it would be awkward if he tried to cash the check and she was dead.
Dead, yeah.
But when she fell into a coma, Adams wasn't around, so his colleague Dr. Harris took over until Adams arrived later that day. Adams never mentioned the fact that she was suicidal or had access to loads of barbiturates. With this evidence, the signs would have pointed to an overdose. She's just gone into a coma, history of like being suicidal, has access to these barbiturates. Adams doesn't mention any of this. Instead, he decided it was probably a cerebral hemorrhage because he's a doctor. 2 days later, a pathologist was called in to take fluid samples. While he was there, he asked if she, get the stomach contents in case it was poisoning. Adams said, "Don't bother. It's definitely a hemorrhage."
What year is this again?
The 56.
56, yeah.
Yeah.
How much does he know about brains and stuff then?
Oh, enough that but I think it's because he's the leading physician. This other guy's just kind of going along with what he's saying.
Yeah.
But he's making some judgment calls anyway. So after the pathologist left, Adams visits a colleague in another hospital and asks about the treatment for barbiturate poisoning. He was told to give the patient 10 cc of Megamide every 5 minutes and was given 100 to use. He was also told to put the patient on a drip. The next morning, Adams called the coroner to make an appointment for the post-mortem. The coroner asked when the patient had died. Adams said, "Oh, she's not dead yet." Just kind of getting ahead of that.
He's getting lazy.
Yeah,
now.
he is.
This
He's-
is just lazy.
So he's given he goes to ask another doctor what the treatment would be, just in case she has barbiturate overdose. And then, while he's at a loose end, he just calls ahead and organises a post-mortem for the next morning.
Well, quite literally killing two birds with the one stone.
Hey,
There.
listen.
That is...
Yeah.
I like the organisation, though.
Yeah.
Like, he's doing it there and then.
But
I'm
it's
very bad at that.
premature, Jason.
It is, but I'm kind of the same. Like, if I leave it on the long finger, I'll forget to do it. So he's like, oh, if I have to wait for
Get
it
it
to die,
done.
yeah, just get it out of the way now, all in one fell swoop.
Well, luckily he got ahead of it, but just so happens that so he injects her once. So he's basically told to inject her 5 times with this stuff. He does it once. He doesn't put her on a drip. She develops pneumonia basically and dies a few days later. So when they check her urine sample after the death, turns out she had taken twice the fatal dose of barbiturates. The same barbiturates that he kept giving to her. So on the day of her death, the police received an anonymous call asking them to look into it. What evidence was there? It would later turn out that the call was from Leslie Henson, a famous music hall performer who was friends with Gertrude Hullett and suspected Adams of foul play, what with all of the murder and money and barbiturates and such. So the coroner confirmed to the police that Hullett's death was unnatural. She's only 50 years old. So they opened an investigation. So simultaneously, the hospitals were they were doing an internal investigation into her death. The coroner questioned Adams' treatment and said it was extraordinary that the doctor, knowing the past history of the patient, did not at once suspect barbiturate poisoning. But despite that, they just decided that she committed suicide.
It just goes to show, as a doctor, you just get this level of privilege which is totally incomprehensible.
But even the other doctors are kind of like afraid to question him on anything.
Well, it's just deference. Everyone's just deferring to you the whole time. It's really terrifying.
I'm just shocked that more people haven't called him out before now.
It's
He's been doing
insane,
it for so long, and I always think that's like, even when people are, they can't do, what's that stage of death, like before you get acceptance, when you're just like, it has to be this, or it has denial, that's the one.
Yeah.
But like, surely someone would have been like, it's the doctor. It's so many very odd
Very
deaths.
clear,
Yeah.
And no one's just, I would be the first person screaming, it's the doctor. Jason, you shot him. It's like, it's the doctor.
Look into that man. This doctor seems to be around an awful lot of sick and dying people. I don't know, just bits of sus. So the internal investigation says probably suicide. Meanwhile, the police are interviewing people that were close to Hullett. And although they'd also thought she committed suicide, but a second post-mortem showed that she died of barbiturate poisoning in August, so the case was taken over by the police's murder squad. The senior detective was Herbert Hannon of Scotland Yard, an officer famous for saying, "Sometimes detectives must ignore the law." That's great. That's a great tagline for your police procedural show.
Like a 90s buddy
He
cop
tips
movie.
his cowboy hat.
Hey, sometimes to enforce
That is
the law,
gas.
you gotta go outside the law. So he's our rogue cop on the case. He suspects Adams of killing elderly patients for their money, and he's going to try and work backwards to prove his hunch to get a conviction. So they're focusing. He decides to focus between 1946 and 1956, so 10-year period. He checks 310 death certificates that were signed by Adams in that period, and has decided that 163 of them were worth examining further because 42% of his patients were diagnosed with cerebral thrombosis, or that cerebral hemorrhage that he diagnosed her with earlier. But the average in the 50s was like 15%.
Yes, he's nearly tripled it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
he is very unlucky.
He is very unlucky, and all the 163 had all died while in a coma, which is also not very normal.
Unfortunate, yeah.
Yeah, he is unlucky. I mean, he's trying his best.
He probably keeps getting all these coma
He's getting
patients.
curveballs, So the police talked to the nurses who had worked with Adams. Some of them said he was great, spoke very highly of them. Others said he liked to give his patients special injections that he never explained to them what they were. Some of them claimed that he would ask them to leave the room before he gave the injection, and that he'd try and distance the patients from the patient's relatives and other doctors as they were dying.
Vitamin injections?
Yeah. I mean, he's probably come up with some new
Vitamin
H. But he doesn't want to give the secret away. He's trying to get a patent pending.
Like Coca-Cola.
Yes. Yeah. The police found it hard to get much information from the medical folk because the British Medical Association sent all the staff in the hospital just a random reminder about professional secrecy and patient confidentiality in the case that they were interviewed by the police. So, I don't know. The Medical Association, basically there's an investigation going in and they send around a letter being like, just so you're aware, don't talk to the cops. But the Attorney General who was looking into the case, Sir Reginald Manningham Buller, he writes to the British Medical Association to try and get them to remove the ban on talking to the cops. This went back and forth for a while until the Attorney General went to meet with the secretary for the British Medical Association and hands him the police report on Adams to convince him how serious the charges were. The secretary brings the report to the head of the BAM before returning it to the Attorney General. 2 days later, they dropped their stance of not talking to the police. But to make sense of that, the Attorney General, they're looking into him in order to convince the Medical Association has told all the staff not to talk with the police. In order to convince them how serious it is, they go and give the Medical Association all the information they have on Adams.
Mm-hmm.
But they hand him the police file. He disappears with it for 2 days, which is it's literally all the evidence that they have on him.
Oh God.
They give it to the Medical Association. He would have had connections to the Medical Association, and that's gone out of their sight for 2 days. But yeah, so this calls the Attorney General's credibility into question. Handing the entire police case to anyone is a bad idea, let alone a union man who could have shared it with them.
And do they think he did?
It was gone for 2 days.
Yeah.
Anything could have happened. There's a lot of conspiracy theories tied up in this at the end, but there's a lot of information-heavy stuff in this, I realised now. Are you following the story-ish? Yeah.
Oh, no, it's great. I'm really enjoying it.
The intrigue of it, yeah. But, so on the 1st of October, the lead detective, Hannon, our rogue detective, he meets with Adams, the suspect. Adams asked, "You're finding all these rumours untrue, aren't you?" Hannon asked him about a prescription Adams had forged. Adams replied, "That was very wrong. I have God's forgiveness for it." Hannon brought up the deaths of Adams' patients and the money he gotten from their wills. Adams said, "A lot of those were instead of fees. I don't want money. What use is it? I paid £1,100 in super tax last year." Hannon mentioned, "Mr. Mullet left you £500. Adams replied, Now, he was a lifelong friend. I even thought it would be more than it was." So there he's going through the classics,
and it would have been true if it wasn't for that pesky bank teller.
Yeah, so he's like, "Yeah, okay, that was bad that I did that, but God, he's forgiven me, So the police surely should."
Mm-hmm.
Saying that thought he would have got. I thought it was a bit stingy, to be honest. If anything, he was a lifelong friend. I thought it was a bit fucking there. And then saying, "Sure, what the hell would you do with the tax? What would I be doing with money? Sure, the government did rake you over the coals." None of this is very convincing to the murder investigators.
Yeah, it's real pale book stuff, isn't it? The poor mouth. Sure, what would I be doing with money? That kind of thing.
Yeah, or who's the famous clip of the MEP who's over in Brussels? It's it sounds like a lot of money, but let me tell you.
What was his name? Oh, do you remember in the late 90s? Oh, that's going to annoy me. From Tipperary.
I'm trying to think. I do know the clip, yeah.
And let me tell you now, you try running a house in Brussels, Galway and Dublin. 3 housekeepers.
2, yeah.
You'd
and
find
150 grand.
Yeah, you'd find it goes away very quickly.
Fair play.
So while Hannon's grilling him, he asks Adams why he listed on the death certificate
Patrick Flynn.
Okay,
yes. Moving on.
We have to do an episode about him at some stage. But he asked Adams why he wrote in the death certificate that he wasn't inheriting anything from the deceased. Adams said, "Oh, that wasn't done wickedly. God knows it wasn't. We always want cremations to go off smoothly for the dear relatives. If I said I knew I was getting money under the will, they might get suspicious. And I like cremations and burials to go smoothly. There was nothing suspicious, really. It was not deceitful." Now, those are the words of an innocent man who's just trying to...
For sure.
Yeah.
If they knew I was getting money, they'd start getting all panicky. And a funeral's a stressful enough time as it is for a family.
They have a lot on their mind.
They have a lot on their mind.
Yeah.
I just want the body to be burned, disposed of, quick as possible. no need to burden them with information about who might be getting the family car. He's a decent man. So on the 24th of that month, Hannon and his assistant Charles Hewitt, who's the head of Eastbourne CID, Detective Inspector Pug, they go search Bodkin's house under the Dangerous Drugs Act. They're looking for morphine, heroin and stuff, but they don't find anything in the house. They ask Bodkins for his dangerous drugs register, just a list of all the controlled substances, so doctors are supposed to keep that. But he said he hadn't been keeping one since 1949. He was shown the list of drugs he prescribed Edith Morrill back in 48, and he admitted that he'd administered most of them himself. Hannon pointed out that he prescribed 75 1/6 grain heroin tablets the day before Morrill died. Adams said, "Poor soul. She was in terrible agony. It was all used. I used them myself." Do you think that's too much?
Oh, God.
The fatal dose is between 1/6 and 2, and he gave her 12.5.
What?
But also to ask the cops to be like, yeah, do you think that was probably too much, was it?
Yeah, she probably was in a lot of pain.
She wasn't a lot of pain.
She must have been.
Yeah.
She must have been.
That's the thing people always say when they're like, yeah, I'd love to try heroin when I'm like on my deathbed. When I'm 80, I'll try it. It's not really going to be an option for you at that point. You will be on heroin. Well, I do think
12, was it 12 grams? Was that what he gave her?
So it's
12 grams just seems like too many grams. I mean, I think even 1 gram is probably too many grams of heroin, but it's 12, it just seems like a big number.
But I mean, she was probably asking for more, you know? He's just trying to help her. It's not his fault that he's surrounded by fiends. He's just trying to be decent, but... So he shows the police a cupboard full of medicine and random food items. And while they're looking at that, he goes over to another cupboard and slips something into his pocket. Mm-hmm. But they see him. They go and ask him what that was. He shows them 2 bottles of morphine. One was marked for Annie Sharp, another patient of his who died 9 days previous under his care. And the other was marked for Mr. Soden, who had died a few weeks previous in September. But his records later showed they'd never been prescribed morphine. But here he is with 2 empty bottles of morphine with their names on it.
Now he's getting very sloppy.
Well, we'll get back to
sloppy.
This is the first time he's tried to cover up anything.
Yeah, but why is he... If he's... Just give them morphine. You don't need to write their name on the vial. That makes sense. He's going to extra work to get caught.
We'll touch back on that in a bit. But so during the search of the house, the police found a load of unused china and silverware in the basement. 20 new motor car tires still in the wrapper. Several new motor car leaf springs. Don't know what that is. A load of wine and spirits. 6 guns in a glass fronted display case. Several automatic pistols. And a room just for photography equipment. A load of expensive cameras just lying around in cases. Which you would have loved. But these are all very expensive gifts that he'd gotten from people. But most of them are still like in wrapping and just sitting in.
He's just hoarding these
He's
gifts.
just hoarding these, yeah. So they take him down to the station for further questioning. He said to Hannon, "Easing the passing of a dying person isn't at all wicked. She wanted to die. That can't be murder. It's also impossible to accuse a doctor."
Oh, that's what he said.
He's kind of...
Okay.
He's doing a lot of like throwing stuff at the wall to see what'll stick.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She wanted it. Also, I'm a doctor. So he's arrested that day on 13 charges, including false representation on cremation certificates. But he was granted bail. He was granted for cash as he conveniently sold the car that Hullett had left him 6 days before he was arrested.
But so he doesn't... He has all the money. He has all the cars.
Yeah.
He has the houses.
Yeah.
He never married that lady.
No.
So he's
didn't have enough money for him.
She didn't have enough money.
Yeah.
What? Give me some backstory of his personal life. Like, what's he into?
Yeah.
What's he into?
Is he seeing anyone?
He's busy chatting up old ladies, dowagers.
I just want to know for what reason. Is it just to get rich in the end? Because he seems rich now.
But sure, easy to know. The money comes in one hand and out the other. He's giving it to charity. Probably. I'm not sure. Yeah, he's... We'll get into his... I don't really know what his character is. He just kind of loved...
Money.
Yeah, or...
Status?
Kind of, yeah. He just loved... Because again, he has all these things, but he's not using them. He's just hoarding them. I think he just... The power... I don't know. We can speculate about what he was up to. It's probably sexual. But so, Hannum, a road cop, He's building the case against Adams. Within a few weeks, he figured they had enough evidence in at least 4 of the cases to warrant prosecution. There was Neil Miller, Julia Bradnam, Edith Marl, and Gertrude Hullett. So how it works is that the cops would go bring the cases to the Director of Public Prosecutions, or in a very serious case like this, they go straight to the Attorney General. They review them, and then they pick which ones they want to pursue in court. So of the 4 cases put forward for Adams, the Crown decided to only charge him with the murder of Edith Marl, but that the 2 Hullett cases could be brought up during the trial to show a pattern. But he's really only... So of the 163 suspicious cases, they're only allowed to actually try 1. The cops didn't know why the Attorney General, Mr. Manningham Buller, had only picked 1 case, especially Marl's, since her body was cremated, so there was no evidence that way, and she'd been dead for over 8 years. She was 81 at the time of her death, so it's not the most salacious of all the murders. Well, sorry, of all the deaths. Like, Hullett was only 50, so that was more kind of suspicious. And they still have the body, so they could show that she'd taken twice the fatal dose, which they thought would be a more convincing case. So the Crown had a tough job. They had to show, firstly, that it had been an unnatural death, and that secondly, Adams had done it. What Adams had done had directly led to the death. So he's arrested again on the 19th of December and charged with the murder of Miss Edith Marl. When told of the charges, he said, "Murder? Murder? Can you prove it was murder? I didn't think you could prove it was murder. She was dying in any event."
John, no one's mentioned murder yet.
Just opens the door. Murder? Also, can you prove it was murder? It's like, well, that is
And
the
there's
job.
a choir standing outside in the snow because it's the 19th of December, isn't it?
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Silent night.
And he's being pulled off.
Oh, and the snow was just falling gently as he's cuffed.
It's been, well, on his way out, apparently he grabbed his receptionist's hand and said, "I'll see you in heaven."
He was real drama.
He
wasn't
was,
he?
yeah.
Oh my God,
I like
you
that,
don't
though.
need that from the boss.
No.
I like that. I like a bit of that, a little bit of pomp and stance.
Yeah.
Murder. Oh, they've come, pulled me away. I'll see you in heaven.
Yeah. Well, it might be like he's thinking about, for those policemen, that might be the only murder case they ever get.
Yeah, he's
And
kinda
if
like
he's
a
just
little-
going to go like, all right, fine, I'll just walk away. That's not a story to
razzmatazz.
say.
That's true. Again, like watching the documentary, there's like footage of it.
I'll see you in heaven.
I'm going to say,
That's my new sign off.
as soon as you're leaving anywhere, it's like, I'll see you in heaven.
Gonna start signing off emails with "see you in heaven."
It's nice because you're basically telling someone that they're going to go
think
to
you're
heaven,
good.
but
Yeah.
you're sneaking in one of like, I'm definitely,
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
But it also sounds like he was thought to be like executed for it. I don't know. I don't know if they had the death penalty in England at the time, but probably.
I think the last person executed was like around the mid-50s.
So maybe he's
Or
just
maybe
died,
early
yeah.
60s.
Well, then he could just be at the tail end of it. He was like, I don't want to be the last one, because then you go down in the history books.
Yeah.
Unlike if you're just a man who murders a load of people, then you get forgotten. But, well, one thing that makes this case, so this is heading into this is where the conspiracy theory bits come in. Later that month, so they've arrested them, they've got one case they've been whittled down to, but they're going to try and make it stick. Later that month, the police get a memo from a Daily Mail journalist saying there's more to this story. He had evidence of an illicit affair going on between a police officer, a magistrate, and a doctor. The memo implied the doctor was Adams, that the magistrate was Sir Roland Gwynn, who was the mayor of Eastbourne, where this is all happening, and also brother to an MP from Eastbourne, and that the police officer was the deputy chief constable, Alexander Seekings. So Roland Gwynn was one of Adams' patients and was known to visit him every day at 9 a.m. They went on frequent holidays together and had spent 3 weeks in Scotland that very September. Gwynn had never married. He was the youngest of 9 children, and until the age of 13, he had been dressed by his mother as a girl in frocks.
Oh no.
With necklaces.
He was the
and
youngest of 9.
Yeah.
8 brothers, I presume.
Probably 8 brothers.
And then him.
Yeah. So Seekings,
tough.
the police officer, was also known to have taken holidays with Adams and Gwynn. So here we have the doctor, the mayor of the region, who was dressed as a girl until he was a child, and the chief police constable, all heading off on holidays together, all being pals.
And they were all in like kind of a 3-way relationship.
Who's to say?
That is-
Sometimes men just go on holidays, Julie.
Yeah.
It's called positive masculinity. And this Daily Mail journalist was trying to stir
It is
some shit.
interesting that it's a Daily Mail back in
Yeah,
1950s.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know,
Huh.
yeah.
So do you reckon they were in on the whole thing?
Well, I mean,
Because you'd be raging if if they knew nothing about the murders and they were just three closeted gay men.
But I'd say, do we have any evidence to suggest that they did?
Well, there is a bit here in a second, but it would be funny if they didn't know anything about it and they're like, you've never picked up the tab once. Yeah. You keep, every time we're in the pub, you're always like, I'll get the next. Like, I didn't realize
I always saved you a sun lounger.
I was wondering why you drove off in a different Rolls Royce every time we met.
It's very difficult, I have to keep this secret for all my life. Can't really tell my parents, my family. It's tough keeping a secret like that. And John's just like, what? Oh yeah, I'm gay.
But there's a committal hearing held in January 1957 before the trial. They decided there's enough evidence to proceed with the case, and from there they determined that Adams would just be tried for the Marl case, and then the Hullet case maybe would be done separately. A certain Sir Roland Gwynn was chairman of the magistrate, but he had to step down because of his friendship with Adams. After the hearing, the £1,000 cheque that Hullet had given Adams went missing from the court, which launched an investigation. It was never found, but local deputy chief constable of Eastbourne, one Mr. Seekings, was the main suspect. So before they get into the murder case, they have a kind of like preliminary trial where the evidence is presented and they decide whether they can go on with it. Seekings is there because he's chief of police. Roland has to recuse himself from it because he's on the magistrate. But during that thing, like, the evidence is brought in to show people, and after it, that check disappears. So one of the key bits of evidence is gone, while his two old pals who also run the entire thing are in the vicinity.
Mm-hmm.
The police did investigate Gwynn in February of that year about his connections to Adam, after which he severs all public ties with them. So there's no reference to homosexuality in the transcript for that interview. And when they're done, the police bring in the Daily Mail journalist and they're like, shame on you for spreading lies. But the journalist swears that he got this information from the head of police, that Hannon guy, who said, sometimes you got to go outside the law to be the law.
Oh, callback. I didn't see that one coming.
Wow.
He's figuring out this information and he can't like bring it up in due course because it's too salacious. So he's slipping it to the local paper, the Daily Mail. A small little newspaper
for the love of the law, or did he mention he was getting paid?
Gossip. It's like, now don't tell anyone, but you'll never believe.
It's real water cooler stuff, isn't it?
Oh god! Imagine you're like, this is the classic. Like, it goes all the way to the top.
Well, I guess as a person of the law, you would want to ultimately, I imagine, see justice done.
Yeah.
So maybe he did think, like, because it does sound like that the police officer got rid of the check.
Yeah.
But wasn't
you know
that
what I mean?
The former superintendent of the guards the other week that was brought up for? Do you have like 250,000 worth of cannabis? He was just in his house. Yeah, and his excuse was, "I've lost over £1 million in bad investments." Firstly, you shouldn't have £1 million in investments. You're just a guard. You shouldn't. What kind of money do you? This isn't the first time you've hidden away 250,000.
It's real narco stuff.
Yeah,
because that was a rumor for ages ago that like one of the ambulances were being used to deliver drugs around. Like, that's crazy stuff of television fiction. And a couple of high profile guards were arrested with loaded drugs. Like, actually, probably,
I wouldn't put anything past anyone. I don't know. You kind of, is anyone kind of beyond repute at this stage?
No. That's a lesson we've learned time and time again.
Yeah.
Well, at the time...
We are. Us three right here.
Yeah.
When the cameras are on.
This podcast, yeah.
Well, so at the time, the trial's huge news because, he's a famous doctor. It's depicted as being trial of the century, which, considering the Nuremberg trials had just happened a few years before that, it's a bit...
And OJ.
Yeah.
I mean, that was coming down the line.
They should have been like, let's just not.
Yeah. I don't think you should call it in the 50s.
No, that's it's only halfway there. You're getting, but also even the OJ trials, like the Nuremberg trials, that, the Nazis.
More people know who OJ Simpson is than the Nazis. The World War II even happened.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should be. But no one remembers Bodkins, who was the third contender right after OJ.
It's because of the TV show. It's recent. You know what they should do? There should be some kind of a channel dedicated to that was the History Channel. That was the History Channel.
Well, we should get David Schwimmer in to play Bodkins, and then
I'd love that.
That would be great. But so there's a poem doing the rounds at the time, leading up to the trial, which went like this. Do you want to hear the poem?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember there's some words in
Look how happy he is.
I love finding poems. In Eastbourne it is healthy, and the residents are wealthy. It's a miracle that anybody dies. Yet this pearl of English lidos is a slaughterhouse of widows if their bankrolls are above the normal size. If they're lucky in addition in their choice of a physician, and remember him when making out their wills, and bequeath their Rolls Royces, then soon they'll hear angels' voices, and are quickly freed from all their earthly ills.
Did they let football fans make the...
That's pretty bold. I knew there was something in there from it. It's but it's not lidos. It must rhyme with widows, so it's lidos. I don't know what that is. Like a fancy bath, I think.
Don't know.
But anyway, that's pretty good.
Oh, very impressive.
Thank you very much. I wrote that myself. But that song's doing the rounds at the time. The trial begins 18th of March 1957 in the Old Bailey and lasts 17 days. It's the longest trial in British history up until that point. Which I feel like that's said about like every trial we do for an episode. It's like the longest trial somehow.
Maybe they started off very short.
They
just
might
you walk in guilty.
They talk about, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, tried, executed in 2 days.
It's true.
And on a holiday, no less.
Oh.
That seems like a joke from a stand-up routine from 70 years ago. But, so a big part of the prosecution's case came from testimony from two of the nurses, Stronach and Randall. They both said Adams had increased the frequency of injections and the amount of each injection while they were nursing Miss Marl. And the many of the injections Adams gave weren't prepped by them at all, but came from a bag that he'd bring in himself and wouldn't tell them what was in it. These two nurses repeated their allegations when questioned by the prosecution, but under cross-examination on the second day, the leading defence counsel, Sir Geoffrey Lawrence, produced notebooks from the same nurses from 6 years ago detailing Adams' treatment of Marl's, which contradicted their testimony.
Oh,
interesting.
So they're saying he's doing all this stuff. That's such a great Columbo moment to be like, oh yeah, that sounds terrible. Just one thing. What about these two books you wrote 6 years ago that say the complete opposite? The prosecution hadn't seen these notebooks, and the defense were never asked to explain where they came from. The Attorney General never followed up on it, which was also odd. They hadn't been in the filing cabinet during the initial search for evidence, but had been in Adams' possession at some point. So
don't you have
Seems
to show
legit.
you have to show all of the evidence you're going to use in a court before?
Yes, you do.
Which is stupid because it would be so much fun.
Yeah,
if you were to watch court when you didn't know that the other person.
Disclosure, isn't it? Yeah.
Like if you didn't, I know that because my cousin Vinny.
Oh, what a film!
Yeah.
Oh, love that movie.
But he's saying that he's like, oh no, I got him right where I want him. I even got him to admit to giving me over all the evidence that they have. Like, that's a great film.
I love it.
But that you see movies from the 80s and 90s, and nowadays people are nitpicky. It's that's not how the law works. You can't have surprise witnesses. That's not a thing. You can't just display evidence. Turns out you can if the whole thing is very corrupt. Halfway through, you can contradict two key witnesses by being what about this evidence from 6 years ago? Evidence that hasn't been shown to the defense and was also in the main suspect's hand at some point.
That's objection. Right? No, I'll allow it.
Well, see, that's the thing. The guys who were supposed to object
didn't
Just didn't do it.
Oh, wow. This is going straight to the top.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that in a second. But another win for the defense was that they didn't call Adams to give evidence, so he couldn't be cross-examined. The prosecution was hoping that he'd be brought to the stand so they could, because he's supposed to be quite talkative. What we've seen so far, he's not very good at hiding evidence. He's not a very cautious man, so they're waiting for him to be called. This caused a big fuss in the court and media. It made him seem guilty that he wasn't, but the defense thought it wasn't worth it. Their main argument by the end of the trial was that trying to ease the last hours of the dying is a doctor's duty, and this has been twisted and turned into an accusation of murder. He's just helping these old folk along. So by April 1957, the jury found him guilty after 46 minutes. Sorry, the jury found him not guilty after 46 minutes.
Oh, you tricked us.
I did.
You gave us the moonlight.
He's acquitted.
Best Oscars moment ever.
Yeah, or what Steve Harvey and one of the Miss Universe pageants or whatever. I think the same thing happened.
Oh, really? I must look that up.
Yes, heartbreaking moments, but so the lawyers. So while the lawyers were making their final speeches, the judge in charge, Judge Devlin, had been contacted by Lord Goddard, the Lord Chief Justice, and he suggested that if Adams was acquitted, maybe he should be released on bail before the second trial started, which had never been done up until that point in British legal history. But Devlin agreed because it was coming up from so high in the chain. So Adams found not guilty in the first case. He still got another second trial coming up.
They let him out on bail. Once he was out, the Attorney General used nulla prosequi, which is Latin for to be unwilling to pursue, a legal power that basically meant they dropped the case. So he's got 2 high-profile murder cases coming up. Beats the first one.
Acquitted.
They're like, all right, we'll get him on the second one. So while the jury is out, the judge gets a call saying, just in case he does get acquitted,
touchy.
Let him out on bail. We'll get him back in for the second trial.
And
as
then
soon as
they
he's out,
don't bother with the trial.
they also use something that's like never, a nulla
It's a
prosequi.
Harry Potter.
It's a Harry Potter spell.
That's
like,
what it
it's
is.
like if he walks out the door and they're like, boom, actually, he's free to go. So Devlin's later, like, the judge, he feels tricked afterwards. He calls it abusive
I
process.
wonder why.
I don't know. But to add to this, back in January, so a couple of months, 1957, that same Lord Goddard, the Lord Chief Justice, who would call Judge Devlin,
Also went on holiday.
he was seen
With the
dining
lads.
with
Stop
Sir
it.
Roland Gwynn and the ex-Attorney General Sir Hartley Shawcross at the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, where the committal hearing was being held. The same committal hearing where the cheque went missing. It was used to pay for the dinner. No, but it wasn't the same town that it was. So they're all meeting up just a couple of months while this committal hearing's being held. So the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK, was only getting started, and the government was afraid of doctors revolting and leaving the new NHS. So they're trying to get them all in. Like, doctors at the time were very well respected. They're more like priests. And they didn't like the idea of like another doctor going on trial for administrating medicine. So that's like I guess it is kind of a grey area. If he hadn't done it so many times, they're kind of like, well, if he gets accused of giving medicine to
It's
other
open
people,
for everyone. Yeah.
open for everyone. And the NHS is just starting, so the government, maybe they thought, let's just disappear this
That
case.
is such an interesting theory.
Yeah, this is going to open a whole can of worms. The government was also on thin ice after the Suez Canal scandal. The previous government had just collapsed and they couldn't deal with another scandal now. Plus also, the new Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan.
Wait,
He
the
had a
Suez
personal
Canal?
connection.
Is that like over in...
That's when nobody
Yeah.
could get their Amazon stuff for a while.
We've just been through COVID. All we had was
a
this
tough
canal.
time, Jason. Take it from me.
Yeah. The Suez Canal, it's the Egyptian one, isn't it? Because Egypt was in, I can't remember. I think a lot of those countries were trying to take back their...
I know it somehow links into the World Cup this year because I was watching it. Just that's the only way I would know about anything like that. So, yeah.
The British still had control over the Suez region, and it was still, which you figure we would have sorted that in the previous like 60 years, but all of the trade and transport from that region goes through this one tiny canal. So whoever controls it, like, controls transport in that part of the world. And the British had it, and then the Egyptians were like, why don't we own this massively influential and very important thing that's in our land borders? So they were in the middle of dealing with that scandal. So they're like, yeah, maybe we don't need another one at home. Maybe we'll just let this man disappear into the night.
Well, it does sound like they actively buried it, for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Also, that means like they're very separate things. And we've got this one scandal going on, so therefore anything bad that happens, we're covering it up.
It was
the
the
lads
50s.
free reign. Do whatever you want because we've got this going on. So
we can only deal with one scandal at a time. But so for another little
we're
bit,
worried about the NHS. It's only starting out. If all the doctors are murdering people, we're not going to have any doctors. Don't have a load of murdering doctors.
sure, it's easy to say that with the benefit of hindsight, you know.
Yeah.
But there was another mild connection in that the Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, his brother-in-law, the Duke of Devonshire, Edward Cavendish, he died suddenly at age 55, suspected heart attack. His GP was the one John Adams. This happened 13 days after Edith Morrell died. So after the death of the person he was on trial for, the Prime Minister's brother-in-law also died, also under Adams's care.
Yeah.
Well,
But that one might have been...
I don't know. So
you're playing a dangerous game with... Like,
Well,
sometimes people actually just normally die.
that's true.
And then he'll be caught for that.
Well, we know what side Jason's on.
But so the Attorney General was Cavendish's cousin, and perhaps he wanted to avoid bringing attention to the family at the time, especially since Macmillan's wife, the Duke's sister, was having an affair with a rival MP. So there's a whole big Attorney General. So the Attorney General was like, maybe, because he figured if the case blew up, the fact that the Prime Minister's brother-in-law also died, also under this guy's care, right at the same time as the case, it could open a whole big thing, including the fact that the Prime Minister was getting cooked by a rival MP.
Yeah.
This is the most British scandal of all. It's amazing. And at the heart of it, a good old man from Antrim who's just
It's a great story.
Yeah.
It's insane. But so I think this is the craziest bit is still to come. But after his murder trial, Adams was luckily convicted in July of 1956 for forging prescriptions. So he had also been doing that the whole time. Making false statements on cremation forms, obstructing the investigation into him after he was concealing the evidence while they were searching the house, and for failing to keep his dangerous drug register. He's struck off the medical register in November, no longer allowed to practice medicine. But after his trial, Adams won several libel cases. He sued one paper that said Adams' victim count could be as high as 400.
Oh my God.
The libel case was presided over Sir Roland Goddard, his old friend. He sold his life story to a journalist then from the Daily Express for £10,000. So he's making money just suing. That's a good way to go as well. Just getting.
He loves money.
And start suing everyone for saying that you've murdered all these people.
It's fair.
But Adams, he's a determined young go-getter. He keeps trying to get his medical license back. He's rejected twice in the following years, but in the third try, he gets it. And he's back practicing medicine in 1961, 5 years after he was struck off for possibly murdering people and forging prescriptions and failing to keep register of his drugs and all the other stuff. So he continued to treat his patients and continued to get bequeathments. Although Roland Gwynne's relationship had soured with Adams after the trial, he suffered a stroke in 1963 and spent his last years in a nursing home. He died in 1971, aged 89. His death certificate signed by his old friend Adams. Gwynne had given instructions to be buried in a lead-lined coffin, an unusual request, perhaps to preserve a body in case it needed to be exhumed for examination. So he specifically says he knows that Adams is around. He specifically asked to be kept in a lead-lined coffin so that the body
He's
can't
been
be...
helping him.
Has he? He just spends the last years of his life, a long time, in a nursing home, perhaps just being tortured with morphine.
Oh, stop. Kevin.
Adams was president.
Think about the holidays.
The old times. Well, he stopped helping him, and then all of a sudden he gets a stroke. And who's there to help him in his time of need? His old friend.
This is real Breaking Bad stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's because he's going to end up with a bell now.
Yeah. Well,
he's 89.
He dies at 89. He spends his...
the last good few years.
The last 15 years.
Okay. I was thinking it is weird for an 89-year-old man to be just fucking lead coffin. Because if something happens as an 89-year-old man in the middle of the 50s, untoward.
So Adams is president and honorary medical officer of the British Clay Pigeon Shooting Association. He was out shooting one day. He fell over and broke his hip. He died 4 days later, on July 4th, 1983, at the age of 84. Revenge? Or common that a man of that age just fell over and broke his hip and then died. But it does seem a bit odd that he just died of a broken hip. He was defended by a lot of people in the medical association. We may never know what happened. His police files are actually sealed until the year 2033. So we can figure out in a couple of years, maybe.
Oh.
He was in his late 50s and the trial was ongoing, so these cases are sealed. It's odd for them to be sealed for 75 years. There's a lot who say he was a mercy killer. He was just helping people who were close to death anyway.
Like Jack Kevorkian.
Yeah, he's a bit of a divisive character.
Doctor Death.
Yeah. Was he doing it to help them? Was he doing it on purpose? We won't know until 2033. Except that the papers were released in 2003 and we know exactly what happened. But we're going to do that bit as a separate bonus episode.
Oh, very smart, guys.
Yes, and not just because you have to leave now. And I
do, as I reach for my coat.
Yes, this is actually a perfect... We were talking about the Patreon stuff earlier on. This is how it's done.
Oh,
leave
nice.
the really salacious stuff.
Well, guys, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's a
I'm
mad
so
story.
sorry that I have to dash.
We'll send you the end because it
Please
is a big twist.
because I feel like I can't... But yes, you have to let me know what happened.
Yeah. I won't give anything away,
But
yes.
thank you so much for having me.
Problem. Thank you
thanks
very
for
much.
It's been a lot of fun. So will I just walk away?
Yeah,
How do we wrap this up?
we'll finish up now anyway.
Okay,
Yeah.
right,
give
guys.
them the
Thank you
bar
so
back.
much for having me.
Thank you very much. We'll tag Julie in the...
But I suppose we'll still do the
descriptions as well.
goodbye, folks.
Yes, of course.